So that fascinated me that this noetic way of sees things in their entirety. I suppose it's like falling in love. You know the whole person as a whole. You might before have known what height they were, what age they were, what country they came from, but that's not knowing. And I think the icon, by sort of extending us beyond a rational faculty, which likes to contain things and know about things, but it can sort of exhaust that faculty. So it opens up this noetic eye. Yeah. Can you talk a bit about, with the understanding of symbolism, how it operates on us? Because symbolism, it has a certain rational faculty to it, but it sort of shows us things in a different way, doesn't it, than a scientific textbook might?
Well, I think we can use the idea of representation, maybe also even as a way of understanding this notion of what symbolism does. When we represent an image, or we represent something in a medium, there's a reason why we do that. And if I'm painting a flower, I'm painting a flower, and therefore the identity of the thing that I'm representing is already taken for granted as I'm representing it, right? In my field of experience, let's say if I'm walking across a field, my focus is large, and I don't necessarily, I'm not necessarily focusing on the single flower. But once I focus on the flower, my perception focuses on it, then that thing shines, right? And it kind of pops out from the background. And representation is a way to emphasize that. And so what I'm getting at is any type of representation necessarily focuses on the unity of that being represented. That when I'm representing something, I'm focusing on its unity. Whereas there's something about the way that icons are made, and a kind of stylization, that there's something about the tropes of iconography with the face, everything about even just in terms of means of representation, are there to focus on this pre-rational recognition, right? Pre-rational recognition of the person. And I think that when I talk about symbolism, this is also what, in some ways, I'm pointing to, which is that a symbol is something that shows us the unity, right? That's what it is. It's the bringing of things together so that I can have an insight into their unity. I'm representing something, so it's not the thing, but what I'm doing in representing it is helping you see it. And pointing you towards its unity. And so I think that icons can help us understand what representation is for, because even though it's a higher version, when we make painting for decoration, we don't necessarily have this more sacred idea of like, let's say, the person appearing to us as a revelation of God. But I think that that's still what we're doing all the time to some extent. They're doing more clearly what art does, right? Like an image of something that helps us see the thing we're representing more clearly. Because why else would you represent something? So this idea that in the kingdom, St. Peter is more St. Peter, St. Paul is more St. Paul, right? They don't stop being themselves, but rather...
in reality, of course, I mean, I've known some saints. They're all just so different.
Yeah.
I feel, in comparison, I'm just a sort of an arbitrary mishmash of different people glued together. But these people, St. Paisius, no one like Paisius. Paisius is himself. He's not someone else attached on. So how do you think this caricature of Christianity came about, do you think? That there's some sort of authority above that makes you all the same, that limits your freedom, therefore limits uniqueness from person to person?
I think there's a kind of perversion that happens in the modern world that is, I call it a de-incarnation. This de-incarnation tends in two directions. One, on the one hand, you have something like absolute idiosyncrasy, right? The illusion of the rebel and the punk rocker, and the illusion of the transgressive, right? That we have this culture of transgression and of pure individuality. And on the other hand, you have this like bland uniformity where the suburbs, everything is all the same, and you have houses, cookie cutter houses all next to each other. So I think it is in some ways, in the decline of Christianity, people then embrace these caricatures about what Christianity was, and it can be either one or the other. It can be this, like you could say in a caricatural way, like a kind of, let's say, Catholic, uniformity, where it's like there's one law and it comes down and everybody, just follows the one law. And then on the other hand, they kind of caricature of a Protestant idiosyncrasy where you improvise, and improvisation is seen as authenticity, and expressing myself to God is seen as this true relationship. When I think, in fact, Christianity is a balance between the two. It's more of this synergistic model where I move into conformity to Christ, but in doing so, the surprise that I find is, like you said, that the qualities that I have end up shining more than before. And so it's both becoming more myself and becoming like Christ at the same time.
I suppose this can be expressed through the difference between individual and person. Person means face, and face is fulfilled in relationship. So Jonathan becomes truly Jonathan in relationship to other people, rather than through egotistical violence. You trample on people to become your true self.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people have gone through the modern art system, and it's really brutal because it's the sort of supreme expression of this individualism, which is not at all. It's actually a death. This leads me to the second thing I wanted to talk with you about. There's something about an image that naturally wants us to meet the prototype. If you show me a photograph of your wife, it makes me think, I want to meet your wife. I don't want to be content just with the image. I think one of the roles of seeing the world symbolically, another perhaps way of saying that, is to see the world full of the logoi, the words of God. It always leads us to personal relationship. So instead of just seeing a tree or stone, if I perceive that symbolically, I'm actually seeing God through that thing. So everything's personal.
We are the image of God, and the world is gathered into us. And so if we're attentive, we can see the sparkles. We can see all the sparkles of meaning and of purpose and ultimately of divinity in the world around us. That is, the identities of the things that we're analyzing are not accessible through science. They have to be received from heaven, you could say. Right? Before I study a flower, I need to know that a flower is something before I study how it functions. And so in order to even frame a scientific experiment, you have to have a prior identity that's already given. And often I think that the power of science makes people blind to that and incapable of seeing the noetic aspect, which is what we're actually talking about, which is that the grasping of the identity of something, right? And the fact that it actually exists in the world is not an analytic function. It is a noetic function. It's a religious experience. But because the power that science offers can make people drunk, on the power that it offers that they fail to see. But for someone who can hold it in both hands, right, who can both have the capacity to see how things are connected in this great chain of being, right, that manifests the transcendent, then science becomes an amazing tool to dive in, right, and to go deeper and deeper into the smaller and smaller parts and see how they're all connected up the chain.
You're saying that the reality is that the complexity, the wholeness is given, and then science can then understand the particulars. Whereas what modern secular science is trying to do, you sort of start with the bits and try to build the organic living, which man can't do. He's trying to do it, of course, with artificial intelligence and that, but it's a perversion, really, isn't it?
It is. And when you say that the whole is more than the sum of the parts, there's no way to account for the whole from the part. It's impossible at every level, from water being H2O all the way to a society or to anything that constitutes a body and has a head which holds it together. The bottom-up approach just cannot account for it. And identities are connected in this vertical manner towards God. Like, a lot of people won't understand what that entails, but I do believe that that's the only way to understand, systems in which agents exist, because you can't.
The third thing I wanted to explore with you are shiny icons, shiny. So we could define inaudiguer of an art object. Often it's also used for rhetoric. A good rhetor would be someone who had inaudiguer. It means liveliness, someone or something that brings to life what it depicts, what it's describing. Good liturgical art embodies, and it doesn't become what it depicts, but it takes on something characteristic of what it depicts. So life with God is living, and of course light is an image of the Holy Spirit. So life with God is full of light, full of dynamism, movement. So we use aesthetic means to have a certain effect on people. That we want to create a certain attitude of soul, an attention, and a compunction, etc., etc.
Like, you know, when you see something very beautiful, in some way you're seized by it, right? You're kind of it stops you, right? Like it kind of shakes you, right? It shakes you out of your mundane, the sense of the mundane, that everything is just boring and arbitrary, and then all of a sudden you're like, no, like this is coming together, like a kind of symphonic experience. You know, I think that can happen. I think it can happen in science too. You know, I think it can happen in any field where you have that sense that things are moving harmoniously, right? And that's the experience of beauty.
Yeah.